Welcome back to the newspaper review this morning. Yes, I told you that when we return, there is more information, more conversation, and we're going to be talking about dealing with barbaric acts in tertiary institutions in Nigeria. I have with me my guest this morning, Dakpo Adaramewa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, about Deborah Samuel. This time yesterday, I didn't know her name, and today we have her in the news. I had a bit of a struggle watching that sensitive video. I told you before we came on air, but I could hear the voice notes, and for those who could translate what she was saying, it seemed like there are two sides to the story. Some people feel that she went too far to blaspheme, and some others say that whether it was blasphemous or not, there's a better way to deal with it. I just want to bring out what you think about barbaric acts in our schools. We dealt with the Port Harcourt boys, the Port Harcourt story in 2012, and now this is in the north, and now it looks like religious extremism is now mixing with barbaric acts, and people now feel like they have the right to do this. I would talk about how the issue about how they said they brought her out of a security post later. But for now, let's deal with barbaric acts in tertiary institutions in Nigeria.
Yeah, I think the first place I'd like to start is extend my sympathy and condolences to the family. Yes, indeed. Because we can only fathom what it feels like to be in their position. It's one thing to lose a loved one, but to lose them in such a barbaric way, and to have to. I've watched the video, and I have to say it's something that has seriously traumatized me, and I don't think I will ever forget in my life. Now, this happened at a university, a citadel of learning, where people are meant to explore progressive ideas, and where debate is supposed to be welcome, right? But yet, look at what happened to this young woman. Now, I give little relevance to what she said or did. What happened is what we need to focus on, right? Because the laws in Nigeria are extensive enough to cover somebody who has insulted somebody or has offended somebody and should have been followed. To think that any demographic or any set of people based on their interpretation, and it has to be stressed that it's their interpretation of Islam, feel that they can ascribe to themselves the right to be judge, jury, and executioner to somebody else and give them capital punishment as well is the height of savagery to me. Yeah, you know,
now that you even mentioned the location, it scares me. Shagari College of Education, Sokoto State, is supposed to produce educators.
Yes.
Yeah, so these students and everyone in that institution is assumed to be educated or preparing to protect the educational sector, especially in the northern part of Nigeria. So do you think that our education is safe in the hands of this student? It started with students. It didn't start with outsiders. Outsiders didn't. Yes, I know the news tells us that they came in later, you know, to join with the other students, but those who started this lynching, the beating, she was beat up. I saw the pictures. I couldn't look further.
Yeah.
But what's the future for education in our country with these kinds of people in school?
Yeah, I think we need to stress that these people are terrorists and so should be treated like terrorists, because what's the difference between them and their cousins in the jungle? It's fundamentally they have ascribed to themselves, based on an interpretation of religion, the right to determine who lives and who dies, and this is what is happening right now. And we have to ask ourselves as a country, like, how did we get to the point where terrorists are brandishing themselves as students and executing people?
Religious scholars are not even accepting what they did. The Sultan of Sokoto has come out to speak up and say, this is absolutely wrong. I know that these kinds of conversations, especially when you ask about religious extremism, is left to scholars to give details. But even the scholars have come out to say no. So at what point do people come to understand who they should hear and who they should not hear? Where did they get this idea from in the first place?
I think it's the same line of extremism in terms of what the terrorists are feeding on is what they are feeding on as well, in terms of that kind of information is what they believe in. And I think everybody needs to understand that the Nigerian state is supreme in terms of determining what is right and what is wrong. Every religious institution is subservient to it, because when we get to the point where we say, okay, your interpretation of your religion should permit you to execute somebody, then where do we draw the line? What is the difference between a man who is executing somebody for abusing his God or a person who is sacrificing somebody to his God? Fundamentally, they're doing the same thing. They believe that their God has given them the right to kill, and they are killing. So I don't understand how on social media we have young people sympathizing with this. We have politicians pandering around this and dancing, tiptoeing around this.
I was going to even ask you the clear laws to understand where people who think that they can do this and get away with it should note that this is what the law says. Is it that the laws in Nigeria is different according to regions and religions?
No, absolutely not. Murder is murder everywhere. And thank God we have capital punishment, because I believe this is the time for us to step up and show the world that, no, this is intolerable. These men, once convicted, deserve capital punishment. And that's the least we can do for Deborah's family. But deeper than this is why we are at this state. And I believe that when you explore certain factors in Nigeria's society, you will see like a pattern, right? Now, what gives these people the confidence to act on this kind of will? You look at the fact that I think it was about a year ago or 2 years ago, it was exposed that a sitting member of a minister in this country actually was proven to have had terrorist inclinations at one point. I know they came out and said he has changed his ways, but this man is still in a position of power. So when young people who have this inclination look up and they say, okay, well, somebody who is a minister once held these beliefs. I believe last week it came out that a circular went out in the Nigerian army describing the fact that obviously we need to expunge all these terrorists within the army itself. So you look at the ministers, you look at the security forces, you see that, okay, well, we have people in these positions that sympathize with us. I think that is what gives these people the emboldenment to go out there and feel like, okay, we can act on these things.
Let's talk about the security forces. In this school, when the beating started, we have reports that she was kept in the security post, but that the security post was overpowered, the men at the security post were overpowered, and she was brought out. Because I'm thinking of the security post in the institution I went to. It was, I don't even want to go in there. It's safer to be with the Nigerian police than to be at that security post. Like, you don't want to be there. It is more secure. I don't know how to put it. It is more strict. This is a university for me, but this, yes, is a college of education. Are they trying to tell me that their security post is just a door that anyone can break down? And then at the time of breaking down that security post, what was made? When did the police show up? That's why I asked earlier if the rules are different according to regions. Does this give any suspicious feeling as to what actually happened in trying to save Deborah before she was finally lynched?
I think the problem is we can't be too sure. But I believe that the university has a role to play. If this girl was in your custody and then somehow she was taken out of your custody and executed, and you couldn't reach out to the Nigerian police or the Nigerian army in time to save her life, then you are definitely negligent and culpable in this, what has happened. And I think they need to think that only 2 people have. I watched that video.
Yeah, 2 people.
Anybody who's watched that video will understand 2. Like 2 people. I watched people take their time, change their stick, and beat a young woman to death. And you're telling me only 2 of them have been arrested? They set this girl on fire. It's shocking.
It is absolutely shocking. But let's talk about the trends of dealing with barbaric acts in Nigerian tertiary institutions now. We talked about the Port Harcourt boys long ago, 2012. This is 2022. You would think that as we move
10 years later,
yes, as we move into civilization faster, as technology gets us faster to connect with the international world, we'll be more conscious of our image. But how do we make our institutions free from these kinds of acts so that in 2032 we don't have this again in the news?
I think what we're fighting is an ideology, and it's always very difficult to fight an ideology. You look around the world, this ideology has been proliferating over time, extending from country to country. And the only way normally that people argue that you can kill an idea is by giving people a superior idea. So I wonder what they were teaching the students at that school. Like, did they not discuss tolerance? Did they not discuss justice? Did they not discuss fairness? Like, what were they really teaching these kids? And I think people need to look that up. Like, how did we arrive at a point where the brightest youth of Nigeria are engaging in such barbaric acts?
Well, let's move to talking about what they are being taught now. ASU is on strike, and we have some students already blocking major highways. Some of them have spread mats on highways and said they are going to stay here. This is where they will do their prayers. This is where they're just going to leave. Is this not setting up our youth to become tougher, to almost, because if you are in school, you have exams to prepare for, your mind will not go to trying to block an expressway. You're busy. So these ones that are now at home, that are idle, are we not preparing them for more issues? Of course, I don't expect anyone to get into things like that. Are we not getting them hardened up, toughened up to be able to do whatever they feel like doing?
Well, I wouldn't link those two things together. I would be very careful about that, because it is one thing for young children, young students to execute their democratic rights, you know, and protest against something that is deeply unfair. You know, you go in for a 4-year course, you come out 8 years later. You know, it's very unfortunate. So yes, people should, within the remit of the law, be allowed to protest, and it's terrible what ASU is doing. I mean, political parties are raising billions. Yeah,
I'm asking this, I'm not going to connect it directly, but I'm asking this to say that, isn't this supposed to make the government now move faster to see that these students are actually idle, they are upset, and they are even telling you, we don't want to stay. But if you see a student that says, I don't want to stay at home, you should respect that student, because school is tough. And then you have students on the roads. Isn't this now, with what is happening in the news, with the students at home, isn't this enough reason to make sure that the government deals with whatever is going on with ASU very quickly and get the students back busy and, you know, finish up whatever they went to school to do?
Yes, I think any responsible government should do that, but my fear is that everybody is too busy worrying about elections. And I think every ASU student should really direct their energy towards that as well. Now is the time to mobilize, now is the time to get your PVC, now is the time to say, wait, we are going to kick out everybody who did not stand up for us in this ASU issue. We're going to kick out every politician who has not come out to speak for Deborah. Everybody who has withdrawn their statements because they are afraid that people will not vote for you. This is the time for us to take action and really show them that we will not stand for this level of savagery. Like, you care more about pandering to extremists than you do about standing up for fundamentally what is right. Like, what kind of human beings are these politicians?
Now, because of our time, let me just wrap it up and ask you this question. What is the government supposed to do in terms of bringing to justice? How do you think that the government can deal with what has happened with Deborah Samuel and, you know, give Nigerians the assurance that this can never happen again in our tertiary institutions and even outside our tertiary institutions?
I hope justice will prevail. I hope that in a country where we still have capital punishment, it will be enforced in this kind of case. And I plead with every Nigerian to not forget Deborah. Because something else will come up and quite quickly we will forget, and these boys could be buried and shoved into one hole and just let go. So everybody needs to follow up this case and make sure these boys are persecuted, these boys face the fullest extent of the law. And my only prayer is that we stick to capital punishment for such a heinous crime.
They are minors as well, some of them, because I'm looking at the age.
They should be tried as adults, I think.
Okay, now there are 200 level students, and I'm looking at some of them may not be up to 18 yet. You think because of this they should be?
Because of such a heinous crime. The crime they committed was not a crime of a minor. So they should be tried as adults, and I believe within the remit of the law there are cases where somebody who's close to that age is tried as an adult, and I think this case should be no different. Considering what they did, anybody who has seen that video will understand how traumatized and how upset I am today.
Thank you so much, Dapo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us as well on this conversation on the newspaper review. We will take a quick break, and when we return, there are more papers to cover. Do stay with us.